Hello guys, this is Amol Khedkar. I welcome you to this video. This is again a video about Russia now. Okay, I have covered three countries before. First is Australia, second is South Korea, and also Indonesia. And now this is the fourth video in my series about the world in 2030. And I will tackle the country of Russia in this video. Before we get started, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel as I upload these kind of interesting geopolitical and world economics news on a daily basis. Okay, and no other channel is doing this kind of analysis and this kind of series that I'm doing on this channel. Okay, so you really don't want to miss out on any of this. Please don't forget to subscribe. So let's get started. So this article will discuss about Russia's economy until 2030, and it says it's going to be falling behind. Okay, this is from the Atlantic Community. Okay, so I'll just read a few things in here. I hope you can read what you're seeing on your screen. Russia's economy is going through a period of long-term stagnation. GDP growth is expected to average close to 1.5% over the next number of years, which is low considering Russia's level of economic development. Okay, this is from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and World Bank. Okay, so Russia is really a unique country in every respect. Russia is the largest country by land area in the entire world. Okay, no other country even matches that. Second largest country is Canada, which has literally half the land area as Russia. So Russia is humongous. Okay, Russia is the only country that spans two continents, Europe as well as Asia. Okay, but the majority of the Russia's population lives on the European side. Major cities like Moscow and Leningrad are on the European side, but on the Asian side, not much activity happens. There's just the Siberian jungles and the very very merely scarcely populated and vast land areas where nobody lives. Okay, so and also one more important thing to understand is that Russia is an energy superpower. Okay, Russia has a whole lot of energy at its disposal. Okay, so Russia supplies almost half of the natural gas to Europe. Russia supplies the whole of oil to Europe. Okay, literally I heard a news recently that if Russia cuts off the oil supply to Europe, then Europe can literally freeze to death. Okay, that's how important Russia is in terms of energy. Okay, Germany depends on Russia, France depends on Russia, Poland, what else, like Italy, Spain, all of these European Union countries depend on Russia for their energy needs, and energy is a very important thing nowadays. Okay, so oil, gas, natural gas, all of these things just come from Russia. Okay, so recently there was a split between Saudi Arabia and Russia, and that's why the oil prices literally went negative. I have made a video about this, so please check that out in my channel. But that's how powerful Russia is in terms of energy. Okay, and Putin has been the most powerful person in the entire world for many years now. Okay, I think right now it's Xi Jinping of China, but Putin is really very, very powerful because half of half of Europe and half of Asia is under the control of Putin. What I mean by that is half of Europe in the sense like all the countries behind the Iron Curtain, behind the so-called east and west divide that happened with the Berlin Wall, right? If you know the history, all the Soviet Union countries, the Eastern Bloc countries, were under the rule of Soviet Russia. Okay, and also many other countries in Central Europe, right? Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, okay, even Mongolia. All of these countries were under Soviet Russia. Okay, so Soviet Russia was a very, very big thing that collapsed in 1991. Okay, so that's why Putin has a hold on half of Europe and half of Asia. So Putin, to be honest, is a very powerful person in the world. So right now, if you look at the Forbes power list, okay, I think the first person is Xi Jinping of China, definitely, because China is it is going to become a superpower in the near future. Second person is Putin. Okay, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, is the second most powerful person in the entire world, and the third person is Donald Trump. Okay, so look at this. It's not an exaggeration that America is losing its ground, because if you look at what the Forbes list said just 15 years back. Okay, like just 12 to 15 years back, American president was the most powerful person in the world, but America has been losing ground consistently, and that's exactly the kind of theme that I portray in most of my videos, that the world is definitely Asian and the future is definitely Asian. Okay, Year by year, the country will fall behind the rest of the world, which is projected to grow by more than 3% on average. Okay, so Russia is definitely going to fall behind the rest of the world with just 1.5% growth, while the rest of the world is averaging at around 3% growth. There are countries like India and China which will have literally more than 5% growth. China, they are projecting that China will not cross 5% growth anytime soon, because its economy has now stabilized, but India definitely will have more than 5% growth. Okay, however, Russia's economic slowdown is not new. Look at this. Russia is in an economic slowdown since a long, long time now. Okay, it became apparent in 2013 when energy prices were at an all-time high. Soon after, the double shock of tumbling oil prices and economic sanctions sent Russia into a severe recession. Okay, the double shock of tumbling oil prices. As I said, Russia is an energy superpower, so definitely, oil prices going negative is going to have a very huge effect on Russia. And sanctions. Okay, there are economic sanctions that are kept on Russia by America. Okay, so if you know, the current G7 countries, earlier it used to be G8. Okay, so Russia was a part of G8, the entire group of countries, but then it was ousted by America and other Western powers, because Russia was, I think, it annexed Ukraine, and that's why they said that this is a sort of colonialism that you are starting. That's why we are going to throw you out from the union, from the G7 G8 countries union. That's why now it's just the G7 countries. So economic sanctions are on Russia for a long, long time, no doubt about that, and that is just going to bring down Russian economy as if there's no tomorrow. Okay, Russia's economic slowdown. Since the 2015-16 economic crisis, the Russian government has managed to refill its fiscal and monetary buffers on the back of recovering energy prices. Okay, so energy is the only thing that Russia can even sustain on. Okay, for the last 5 years, economic stability has been the dominant goal of Russia's economic policy. Okay, they really want stability in Russia. Russia is going through also a very big demographic change. Okay, as I've pointed out in the videos about Australia and South Korea, Russia is also facing a sort of diminishing population. Okay, there are not enough young people in Russia, and the older people are not dying, and new people are not getting born. The exact same kind of scenario that I've outlined in Australia and South Korea. Okay, so if you have not watched those videos, please don't forget to check them out in the channel. Okay, or even in this playlist that is about the world in 2030. For the last 5 years, economic stability has been the dominant goal of Russia's economic policy. Pension cuts and tax increases have helped to turn Russia's budget deficit into a surplus, but the population is paying a high toll. Look at this: pension cuts and tax increases. Both these things are levied on the general public. Okay, that's why the population is paying a high toll. That's what they tell in this article. In early 2014, in early 2019, real disposable incomes of the Russian population were still 13% lower than in 2014. Look at this. In 2019, the real disposable incomes were below by 13% than it was in 2014. Russians are unlikely to gain their pre-crisis living standards until 2024, the year when Putin is expected to leave the Kremlin. Okay, so Putin is expected to leave the Kremlin by 2024, but to be honest with you, if you ask my personal opinion, he is never going to do that. Okay, Putin is a very powerful person, and in Russia, most of the dissent is just crushed. So he's just going to stay on that seat for as long as he's alive. Okay, so what they are saying is that Russians are unlikely to gain their pre-crisis level living standards until 2024. Okay, so not anytime soon Russia is going to be back on the world stage. While it lacks drivers for growth, Russia's economy is currently not at risk of becoming unstable. Okay, the only reason for that is the energy sector. Okay, as I said, the constant flow of oil and gas dollars will remain an important pillar of Russia's current account surplus. As I said, constant flow of oil and gas dollars. Okay, that's the basic strength of Russia. Okay, oil and gas is just the only strength of Russia. Okay, with a new fiscal rule implemented in 2018, the Russian government is able to compensate oil price fluctuations as long as the long-term average price remains above USD 50, which is below the forecasts. Okay, so as long as the average price remains above $50. Right now it is, I made a video about this where I say that the oil prices are literally going negative, and unless and until they go above 50, no company is going to make profit out of it. That is the exact same thing that they are pointing out over here. Okay, as long as the oil prices remain above $50, and export volumes do not shrink, and export volumes do not shrink for Russia, Russia is just going to be a very relevant player on the world stage. Okay, and why the export volumes matter? Because Russia exports most of its oil and natural gas to the other countries like Europe, like Central Asia, like China, like Japan, like Korea, right? So that's why Russia will not be in a very deep recession, but at the same time it is not going to be a dominant player. Okay, the older Soviet Union kind of strength, Russia is never going to get that. Just remember this. Okay, low public and private debt as well as a hawkish central bank are making financial instability unlikely. Okay, so central bank is also very hawkish in the sense like they have a keen eye on the economy. Okay, and low public and private debt, so debt is also a very important thing, and Russia has very less amount of debt, so even these two things work in Russia's favor. So Russia will not have economic instability very soon, but it surely will not be a very major player on the world stage. Inflation is projected to stay close to 4%, the rate targeted by the regulator. Okay, so the central bank has said that the inflation will be around 4%, and it is projected to be just that. Okay, Russia's GDP growth rates are limited by structural weaknesses which are unlikely to change even in the longer term. So as I said, Russia's growth rates are limited by structural weaknesses. So there are structural weaknesses in Russian economy. Okay, what are those? As I said, demographic shift. Okay, aging population, not enough workforce, then it's very hard for people to come to Russia and start working there. So the only people who come to Russia as immigrants are the former Soviet Union countries. Okay, so most of the countries in the Eastern Europe or Central Asia, they come to Russia. Okay, they are the people who come to Russia to gain a better life. Okay, but no other country people come to Russia. Okay, it's not like America. Like in America, people come there from all over the world, but not in Russia, because definitely Russian language is a pretty hard thing to learn, and on top of that the corruption in Russia, then the cold, right? Russian cold is very very harsh. I mean, come on, there are towns in Russia that literally freeze during winter. Okay, so all these things point out to the exact same direction, as you can see here, that Russian economy has structural weaknesses which are unlikely to change even in the longer term, right? So even in the next 30-40 years, these structural weaknesses are not going to change. Okay, that is just the plain fact. The economy's potential for catching up is severely restricted by the institutional environment in Russia. Okay, institutional environment in Russia. The court system is unreliable. As I said, there is a huge amount of corruption in Russia. There is a huge amount of oligarchic nature in Russia. So like few rich people run the entire country. There's no doubt about that. Okay, court system is unreliable, corruption is widespread, and the bureaucracy is pervasive. Definitely true. All these three things are definitely in Russia. Security services are eager to capture economic assets, causing a general insecurity of property rights. So even the property rights are not secure. So what it means by that is, if you buy a property in Russia, and if you want to sustain on that property, it's not that easy, because many security services are eager to capture on economic assets. What does that mean is that security services, in a sense like the state government or the local government, municipal government, or the central government, the Russian government, they are going to capture on the economic assets. Okay, so what that means is that they are going to tax whole lot to people who are buying those kind of assets. Okay, so like property taxes or wealth taxes or many other things. Okay, so it's not very advisable for foreigners to buy a property in Russia. That's all it means. As a result, private investment is comparatively low. As I said, private investment is definitely low because it's not that good deal to buy a property in Russia, while investment undertaken by the dominant state-owned enterprises is not helping overall productivity. Definitely true. Why investment undertaken by the dominant state-owned enterprises? So state-owned enterprises like Gazprom. So Gazprom is a very big gas company that is owned by Russia. Okay, so that's why it says investment undertaken by the dominant state-owned enterprises like Gazprom is not helping overall productivity. Definitely, that is not going to help overall productivity. That is not going to boost the Russian economy. Okay. Additionally, the dominance of the hydrocarbon industry impedes the development of future-proof sectors in the economy. Okay, this effect, sometimes called Dutch disease, means that the natural resource industry vacuums up qualified labor and strengthens the ruble, which makes it difficult for other sectors of the economy to compete with imports and on foreign markets. So this is the exact same thing that has happened in many other countries which are oil rich, right? So like Venezuela, like Libya, like Iraq, Iran. So the oil sector just consumes everything, and no other industry is allowed to come up. Okay, that's what it means. The Russian oil industry will not drive growth either. Okay, production volumes are expected to decline in the 2020s as older fields are exhausted and new reserves are difficult to develop without Western technology. Okay, so older fields are going to get exhausted and new oil reserves are difficult to develop without Western technology. Why does it say without Western technology? Because there are sanctions on Russia right now. Okay, so the Western technology cannot reach Russia because there are sanctions going on with Russia. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Russia cannot just depend entirely on oil. As long as the oil lasts, Russian economy can go along. It can just survive until that time. But after that, it's anybody's guess. Nobody knows. Okay, Russia's very peculiar demography also weighs on its growth outlook. As I said, demography is a very important thing. Because of extremely low birth rates since the 1990s, the labor market currently faces a shortage of young workers, while scores of baby boomers are entering the pension age. Exact same kind of problem that I've outlined in Australia and in South Korea. Look at this. Uh, the extremely low birth rate since the 1990s. The labor market currently faces a shortage of young workers, while scores of baby boomers in the sense the people who were born right after the Second World War are entering the pension age. Okay, so who is going to pay for this pension? Nobody knows. How do you think the pension system works, right? So the pension system only works when there are enough people to contribute to the system. And who contributes to the system? The working age population. But the working age population is declining. So the pension system is in a complete peril. So definitely they are going to cut down on pensions in the near future. In sum, the number of Russians within the working age bracket has quickly fallen from 85.4 million in 2015 to 81.3 million in 2019. Look at this, literally 4 to 5 million drop from 2015 to 2019 in just 4 years. So 1 million people are losing. Russia is losing 1 million people each year who can contribute to the economy, who are in the working age population. A trend that will only slow in the mid 2020s. Okay, look at this. Migration has compensated for some of the labor shortages, but the number of migrants drastically dropped to an all-time low in the 2018 as Russia is becoming less attractive for migrant workers. Why is Russia becoming less attractive for more migrant workers? Because every other country has everything nowadays. Okay, I mean, if there are people in Kazakhstan or in Poland that want to access many different things, they can do that just by sitting in Kazakhstan or Poland. They don't have to go to Russia for that. Earlier it was the case that people had to go to Russia to get all the good things. Okay, but not anymore. Okay, the world has become like a global village right now, and that's why, as I've said, globalization is facing a very big shift in today's world. Okay, that's why Russia is becoming a less attractive for migrant workers in the current scenario. Okay, while the lack of workers hurts growth, it also ensures that unemployment will not rise above 5% in the coming years. Okay, Russia's economic woes could be mitigated with the right economic policies, but most options remain rather hypothetical because they are not compatible with the country's political economy. So, most options remain hypothetical because they are not compatible with the country's political economy. Very important thing. So, political economy of Russia is, as you know, like Putin is grabbing power like as if there's no tomorrow. That's why most of the options that are in place to rectify the Russian economy cannot be done because the politics comes into picture. Russia could invest heavily in education and healthcare to increase the productivity and longevity of its shrinking workforce. Okay, so Russia can invest in education and healthcare to increase the productivity and longevity, like the number of years that people live of its shrinking workforce. So even Russia is going through this kind of shrinking workforce problem. Okay, exactly like South Korea and Australia. Domestic and international experts have repeatedly made this suggestion throughout Putin's time in power. However, spending on security services and the armed forces has always had a higher priority in Russia's budget, while Russian schools and universities are chronically underfunded. Okay, look at this. Okay, spending on security services and armed forces. So Russia really has to gear up its muscle regarding armed forces and security forces. That's why Putin spends a whole lot of money on these two things, while the universities and schools in Russia are chronically underfunded. Okay, so that's what I said. The normal people in Russia are very destitute. They are not living a proper life. But Putin is trying to project an image to the entire world as if he is like a strong man and he is going to bring Russia on the forefront. Okay, the Kremlin's restrictive budget policy after 2014 has further hurt education spending. Okay, so I'll just read two more paragraphs and then I'll stop. The Russian leadership could also try to reduce the state's footprint in the economy to spur competition and create more incentives for the right kind of investments. Okay, however, in the last 10 years, the Russian state didn't give up control over a single of its biggest state-owned enterprises. So the Russian state is not giving up control over even a single of the biggest state-owned enterprises. So in Russia, everything is state-owned. Okay, so private sector investment is just not encouraged. Okay, so how does a country grow, right? It grows by private sector investment. If the government is just going to own everything, then there's no need for private sector investment. There's no need for people coming from outside and investing into the country. Okay, the reason is that privatization contradicts the interests of key personal allies of Vladimir Putin, who has turned the largest state-owned companies into their personal realms, and attempting to change that can be dangerous. Look at this. This is a very out in the open article. The reason is that privatization contradicts the interests of key personal allies of Vladimir Putin. So many of the oligarchs in Russia are key personal allies of Vladimir Putin. Okay, and privatization contradicts their interests. Okay, who have turned the largest state-owned companies into their personal realms, and attempts to change that can be dangerous. So they have literally turned the state-owned companies into their own wealth funds, and if privatization comes in, then literally they are just going to have a big backlash. And there are instances in Russia where journalists just get kidnapped, they just vanish all of a sudden. So Russia is a pretty repressive government, I mean, no doubt about that. Okay, when the former Minister for Economic Development, Alexei Yulukayev, pushed for the privatization of Bashneft, an oil company, he faced resistance from Igor Shenchin, the managing director of state-owned oil giant Rosneft. Okay, a few months later, Yulukayev was arrested in a sting operation initiated by the Sechin under dubious corruption charges. Yulukayev is now serving an 8-year sentence, while Bashneft was acquired by Rosneft without competition. So just another example of what it means to do business in Russia. Okay, it's a pretty dog eat dog sort of place. Okay, where this person tried to say that we need to have more privatization into the economy, but he was arrested in a sting operation under dubious corruption charges, and then the deal happened anyway. So it's pretty hard to see this kind of behavior change in Russia anytime soon. Okay, that's why I don't predict Russia to be again I don't see Russia to again have the glory of Soviet Union by 2030. It's just going to decline and decline as if there's no tomorrow. Finally, a less confrontational foreign policy would facilitate trade and investment relations with Russia's most important economic partners in Europe. Okay, Russia has a very confrontational foreign policy. Okay, Russia really just does not want to be friends with anybody. Okay, so that's why it is saying that a less confrontational for foreign policy would facilitate trade and investment relations with Russia's most important economic partners in Europe. But Russia, I don't think Russia is can even do that, to be very honest with you. Okay, at least under Putin's leadership, this seems highly unlikely. The exact same thing as I pointed out. Under Putin's leadership, this seems very unlikely, because Russia has been a confrontational thing against the West for a long time now. Okay, so even right now, people in the US believe that Russia interfered into the 2016 elections, and Putin helped Trump win. Okay, so it is proven false right now, but even then people believe it. So definitely Russia is a very confrontational country. Okay, and it is not going to change anytime soon. Moscow perceives its own aggressive policy over the last number of years as rather successful, and sees itself on the winning side of the current changes in the international arena. So Moscow believes that the aggressive policy is successful, so it doesn't want to change it. Okay, if the Kremlin has to choose between what it interprets as Russia's security interests and a chance for future economic development, the latter will always lose. Okay, look at this. If the Kremlin had to choose between what it interprets as Russia's security interests and a chance for future economic development, the latter will always lose. So what is going to lose? Chance for future economic development. What is going to win? Russia's security interests. So Russia's security interests dominate almost everything. Okay, so and these are all the things that are highlighted in this article. And as I said, Russia is an energy superpower. It definitely is a very important country on the world stage right now, but it is not going to remain that important by 2030. That is my honest assessment. Okay, India and China will definitely rise, because they have all the ingredients for a successful economy, like huge workforce, then English speaking population, at least for the case of India, then large amount of public private partnership. Okay, so all these things work in favor of India and China, but not in favor of Russia. Okay, so Russia will still be an important country by 2030, just because it is the largest country by land area. Okay, and it is a humongous country. It has a large amount of political power. As I said, half of Europe and half of Asia are in Putin's pocket at this point, and that's not an exaggeration. Putin literally controls half of Europe and half of Asia by just sitting in Kremlin and sitting in Moscow. Okay, so that's why Russia will definitely keep on having a sort of political leverage. It will keep on having a sort of political power over the rest of the world. But the people in Russia are not going to see their life quality increase anytime soon. In fact, it is going to keep on decreasing. Okay, that's why many immigrants are also not finding it any lucrative to come to Russia nowadays, as was pointed out in this article. Okay, so this was my analysis of what Russia will look like in 2030. If you liked my analysis of this article, please don't forget to like, comment, and share this video to with your friends and family, so that even they can understand what Russia will look like in 2030. And also check out my other videos in this series and also on this channel, so that you can get an idea about where exactly we're heading in the next decade. Okay, and also please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Subscriptions really tell me that you guys are liking my content. And see you next time. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.